The moment the grand daytime gala reached its brightest hour, a paralyzed millionaire sat in her wheelchair near the glass wall while hundreds of polished guests flowed around her as if she were invisible, and what happened next would quietly expose every hidden cruelty in that shining room. If this story touches your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because stories like this deserve to be remembered by our community. Her name was Alindra Voss, once a force in global investments, a woman whose decisions moved markets and whose presence once silenced entire boardrooms. But that afternoon, beneath crystal chandeliers and sun pouring through cathedral-high windows, she was nothing more than a beautiful shadow seated in a chair no one dared acknowledge. The accident had stolen her mobility 2 years earlier, but what hurt far more than the paralysis was how quickly the world learned to look past her. At the gala, she noticed it immediately in the subtle patterns of avoidance, the careful rerouting of conversations, the polite smiles that never quite landed on her eyes. People admired her from a distance like she was a painting behind glass, valuable but untouchable, and therefore irrelevant. Outside the main hall, through a side corridor where service staff moved like quiet currents beneath the attention of the wealthy, a single father named Calder Winslow pushed a worn cleaning cart across polished marble floors. He had come to the event only as contracted maintenance staff, a temporary job that helped him keep rent paid and his young daughter safe in a small apartment across town. Life had reduced him to invisible work, but he carried himself with a steady dignity that came from necessity rather than pride. His daughter's sketch of a dancing figure was folded inside his wallet, a reminder of a promise he had made to her that people could still find joy even when life felt unfair. Inside the ballroom, Alindra watched the world spin without her. Then, unexpectedly, she noticed Calder. He was not part of the glittering crowd. His uniform was plain, his hands marked by labor, and yet there was something in his posture that did not match the invisibility others had accepted for him. While everyone else avoided her presence, he glanced in her direction without hesitation, as if seeing a person instead of a condition. That single moment felt like a disturbance in the air, subtle but undeniable. Calder was not supposed to approach her. It would have been easier to continue cleaning and disappear back into the corridors of service. But something about the quiet loneliness around her wheelchair pulled at him in a way he could not ignore. He had known what it meant to be looked through, to be reduced to function instead of humanity. And in that bright room full of laughter that excluded her, he recognized a familiar silence. Alindra, for her part, had long stopped expecting invitations from the world. Yet when Calder paused near her table, something shifted in the rhythm of her guarded isolation. He did not offer pity. He did not perform discomfort. He simply looked at her as though she belonged there as much as anyone else. In that fragile space between them, something unspoken formed, not yet trust, but the possibility of it. He set down his cleaning cloth, hesitating only briefly before extending a simple, unexpected invitation that no one else in the room would have dared to offer her. He asked her to dance. The words were not loud, but they rippled through her in a way that made the world feel suddenly sharper. Around them, the gala continued its polished indifference, but Alindra felt the weight of every stare that would soon notice what was happening. Her instinct was to refuse. She had spent years protecting herself from moments like this, from the vulnerability of being seen in ways that reminded her of everything she had lost. Yet something in Calder's expression carried no demand, no expectation of performance, only presence, and so, in the middle of a daytime hall filled with people who had already decided she did not belong in motion anymore, Alindra agreed. Calder carefully guided her wheelchair to an open space where sunlight spilled across the floor like liquid gold. There was no music change, no dramatic pause from the world around them, only the quiet persistence of life continuing despite them. He placed his hands gently near hers, not to lift her, not to force anything unnatural, but to move with her in whatever way was possible. It was not a dance in the traditional sense. It was something else entirely, something that existed beyond definition. At first, the surrounding guests reacted with confusion, then discomfort, then quiet ridicule. Some turned away, unwilling to witness what they considered inappropriate. Others watched longer than they intended, unsettled by how deeply human it felt. Alindra could feel her throat tightening, not from shame, but from something more dangerous, hope. It had been so long since anyone had treated her body as anything other than limitation. Calder did not look at the crowd. His focus remained steady on her, on the subtle movements they created together, on the rhythm they formed not through music but through intention. In that moment, Alindra was no longer a forgotten figure in a chair. She was part of a shared act of presence, something fragile and real. The turning point came when a few of the guests began to realize who she truly was, not just a disabled woman in a wheelchair, but Alindra Voss, the same woman whose financial influence had once shaped industries they depended on. Suddenly, the invisibility they had granted her began to collapse into awkward recognition. Some tried to step forward with forced smiles, attempting to reclaim a connection they had abandoned too quickly. But Alindra noticed none of them. Her attention remained on the man who had not needed her wealth or her name to see her. Calder, meanwhile, began to feel the weight of his own reality pressing in. He was a cleaner in a rented uniform, a father with overdue bills and a daughter who believed in him too much to accept disappointment easily. He knew how fragile moments like this could be, how quickly kindness offered in one breath could be erased in the next. But Alindra's expression did not carry judgment. It carried something more disarming. Gratitude, yes, but also recognition, as if she too had been waiting for someone to treat her life as still unfolding rather than already concluded. As the afternoon sun shifted across the marble floor, something changed in Alindra that no medical report or therapy session had ever managed to reach. It was not about movement. It was about being seen without reduction. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was not directed at the crowd but at Calder, and though no dialogue is needed to understand what passed between them, it was clear that she was not thanking him for pity. She was acknowledging courage. The gala, once alive with social certainty, now felt exposed. People who had ignored her for years suddenly remembered her name, her influence, her importance. But Alindra saw them differently now. Their attention no longer held value. It was conditional, reactive, built on status rather than humanity. Calder, by contrast, had offered something without condition, without calculation. In the quiet aftermath of that shared movement, Alindra made a choice that surprised even herself. She refused the rehearsed conversations that tried to pull her back into the center of social performance. Instead, she remained in that space near the glass wall where sunlight still touched the floor, as if reclaiming it as her own. Calder eventually stepped back, uncertain of his place in the world he had momentarily entered. He worried about consequences, about misunderstandings, about the fragile stability of his job. But before he could retreat fully into invisibility again, Alindra's gaze stopped him. It was not an appeal of wealth or authority. It was something simpler. A request not to disappear. What followed was not a dramatic reversal of fortune in an instant, but the beginning of something quieter and more lasting. Alindra later ensured that Calder's employment was not only secured but expanded into something meaningful within her foundation, recognizing the integrity he had shown when no one else did. But more importantly, she found herself stepping back into life with a different understanding of value, one no longer dictated by ability or status alone. Calder, in turn, did not suddenly become wealthy or transformed into someone else. He remained a father working hard for his daughter, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer believed invisibility was permanent. His daughter noticed it first, the subtle change in how he carried himself, as if the world had finally responded to a truth he had always carried quietly. Alindra and Calder's paths continued to intersect in ways that were not dependent on spectacle but on shared respect. What began as a single moment in a daylight gala became a quiet reminder that dignity is not granted by crowds but recognized by individuals willing to see beyond what is expected. And long after the chandeliers had stopped glittering in memory, what remained was not the image of wealth or paralysis or status, but the simple act of one man asking a forgotten woman to dance in the only way they could, and changing both their lives without asking permission from the world around them. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey.